So do you want to hear the part of the vocal exercises that you interrupted?
I mean, go ahead.
So it was like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 4 soup, rice, noodle, 4. Yeah, something like that. All right. Welcome everyone to 5 of the week this week. We're once again joined by Inepto and no one else. Although it might say at danger golding on your screens, that's fake news. So yeah,
It has
good
been
evening.
disappearing forever.
Yes,
It's
sporadic
not like he wasn't
appearances.
invited, he just doesn't like us. He is not willing to participate.
Yeah, and he's also not willing to not really like be proactive in terms of scheduling. So we'll just go on our terms, or rather, I will go on my terms since it's my TP that we're working towards. Yeah, in this week's 5 of the week, we're unfortunately, I'm just gonna send my apologies here live to Level Up, who asked if he could come on and join for talking a little bit about the SBDL, but that will have to be moved to next week as yeah, I was busy all weekend now here and couldn't just get Level Up in here with a 2 minute warning. So we'll do more of that next week when we have more freedom to schedule a good time. But this week we're going to talk about some of the recent announcements made in the general SBA landscape this week. Um, yeah. Where should we start with these? There's been from Monday. There's been the beginning of public forum. Then there's been changes to depth charter rules and changes to player creation in general. Should we just go in chronological order and you can give us your thoughts on, as a board of directors member, of how the
That's the easiest one.
how the public forum has kicked off so far, in your opinion?
I mean, it's a great thing, I think, because it makes the leadership more accessible for members who have a question on the mind and maybe it gets lost in general chat or they did not feel inspired to ask us so far and now got their dedicated channel. And I think it's been a good week so far. Lots of interesting questions and good answers from everyone involved. So how have you perceived it so far? I don't know if you have asked a question yet.
No, I don't think I had anything to ask since uh, pretty much all the responses to people's questions I also could have like thought of the correct answer, so to speak. Like I was pretty much in line with what the ideas were. In general, only thing that was exceedingly interesting to me was the general crowdsourcing of ideas for FIBA basketball, for board of update topics, board of directors update topics, and freak changes and paid advertisements. All of those things seem like something that have been discussed either in private or in semi-public at length, and that I also read about previously. But yeah, in general, I also think it's a good idea, just for the reason that you outlined, that maybe there's a time of a day that two or more admins are online. I think I also said something of this note in the SBAO survey or SBA survey earlier this season or last season. That maybe there's a time of day where a few admins and general board of directors people are online, and then the discussion flows quite well, and there's more access to people's ideas and what's going on. But then by the end of the day there might be 750 new messages, which means that the discussions are only sort of temporary and not stored as it used to be in a forum setting in the past, maybe perhaps. So I think it's there's no harm whatsoever, and they still or you still even can like restrict yourself in only speaking about what's already decided and voted on or being voted on, rather than just a lot of theoretical and stuff that might just be brought up in the past, or people are still hesitant or are trying to construct in their minds rather. So all in all, a very good change and no real uh, no nothing bad to say about it, at least. And yeah, if someone listening is not familiar with this, it's in the SBA Discord server that you can um, join from the SBA website. In the, I think there's a tab in the bottom
There
or at the bottom
is
right
there's
corner.
one in the top right when you're on desktop right under your profile
Yeah, and
in the
also
upper right
under the
corner.
recent posts tab in the bottom right of the, if you scroll down, and I think on mobile it's quite similar. It's under the, let's see here. Yeah, there's some boxes under the entire forum that you can see recent games, donation options, recent posts, and then a big old button for join our Discord. But there's also a Discord icon above the search bar and under your user options on the top right that you can also press to join. And in the announcement thread in the announcements forum about public forum on Discord, there's also a link to the SBA Discord that you can come on in and check out, and also um, share your questions, maybe through the office hours public forum or directly to any individual also in the server. So yeah, that's about it for public forum. Everyone seems to agree as well that it's a very good change. So I don't think there's even a devil's advocate undermine a position that I could take here if I wanted to. I don't, but anyways. Then on Thursday, there were new changes to depth chart rules, where there's been a lot of discussion, especially around the steals and blocks numbers for uh, beginning with the steals and blocks numbers for players coming off the bench in the past, and then expanding all throughout for six man of the year voting, and most recently with Einar Ilmarsson being one of the best players in the league, but still coming off the bench. The change is, excuse me, for players off the bench now in the SBA. I suppose it also expands to SBDL, but nothing concrete here on the ruling. There's a minute limit now set at 32 minutes each for a player off the bench. So in the past, it was a quite a common setup to have a player from the bench set to 48 minutes a game, or if you had six players with a lot of positional versatility, then you'd have them all set to 40 minutes, which obviously also adds up to 240 minutes through the game. And yeah, now it's only capped at 32 minutes. And in the past, there was a during the time when I was league simmer, there was a change that you can only set your starters to a minimum of 24 minutes. But
Yes.
obviously, this from the beginning, people realized that you can still circumvent the whatever you're doing by just having more starters at below 48 minutes and having your player off the bench set to 48 minutes still. And
I mean, at least it got rid of the whole filler starting for 1 minute of the game and then pissing off to the bench. Like
yeah,
now, if you want to set your filler to starting just to get someone off the bench, you have to have that filler out there for 20 minutes on average.
yeah.
If you set him to 24, so
In the 1 minute a game cap, I also sometimes you could see this in the playoff play by play, but I never was really a fan of it since maybe the larger sample results came out better than in the time that you didn't need the filler or the guy off the bench was ruling the court basically, but then there were also crunch time lineups that you'd still have the 0 minute or 1 minute starter playing the last 6, 7, 8 possessions of the game because the starting lineup is also sort of by default the closing lineup for any game in the sim engine. So in general, I believe people who tested it that the results were much better with their filler starting and superstar off the bench, but also read pretty weird that you'd have Speedy Gonzalez there out in crunch time and Seijon Suzuki on the bench, stuff like that in general. So, what do you think about this rule? I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory as well, and pretty um, like quite simple to follow and learn, at least.
yeah. So as Mo lined out in the whole announcement, initially it came from us discussing if we should put a minutes per game limit on the Six Man of the Year award, since it has been quite controversial throughout the last, I don't know how many seasons, starting with XMJ back in the 40s and now Einar doing his thing. But we quickly agreed that making a set criteria for the Six Man of the Year award was not the move, and swung towards getting a minutes restriction in the depth chart, because we have a similar rule like you said for starters having to play 24 minutes per game. The question only was, which cutoff do you pick? And in the end of the day, we want to encourage GMs to send their best players out front, and so, but still maintain that strategic flexibility of having more than 5 people on your roster.
Yeah,
Like there have been many quite successful teams, among them, of course, the Aviators last season, who are running a 6 deep rotation. And it has its benefits, and we didn't want to hamper that depth completely. Like you said, the Ravens were running a 6 man, 40 minutes per game for each lineup for a while. And this strategy should remain. And so we ended up on 32 to give everyone at least 6 minutes per game you're taking off, a bit more than 6 minutes per game from every starter, and still have that strategic flexibility, but also have your your restriction that doesn't have someone leading the league in minutes while coming off the bench. So it's a good balance, I think.
yeah. I'm also just been a general manager for 2 seasons, but I don't have a strong opinion on if I would have or um, would have used the some sort of cheese with a sixth man, since I don't think I quite like players or team builds that afford themselves for it. Of course, I'd like to have the Brooklyn Bullets of season 44. Is it
With
as the
Miyamoto.
yeah, in general, just the season that the rule change came in, where McMahon was starting. the first
Yeah.
6 or 7 games off the bench with max minutes, and the starter was with 0 or 1, whichever it was. Of course, I'd like to have a team with that sort of talent and positional versatility, but I'm not sure if I would have ended up testing even for that possibility if I didn't know of it beforehand. And even if I did, I probably would only go for that as a last resort. And there could also be some with the something there with that Molholt himself brought it up to chill zone back then, which then I think if one of my players would want to do that, then I would certainly try it and see what it did for the team. But yeah, I wouldn't have been. I don't think so, at
Something you
least.
would seek out.
Yeah, in general, I just feel like I would start with the best players in the starting lineup and work out from there rather than try to circumvent the general idea. But yeah, it made sense then to me as a simmer and as an SBA user already. And this change also makes sense. So in general, I just think it's good, and hoping to see how people adapt to it in these seasons after now.
I mean, this whole topic ties in quite well with the next announcement and rule change about freak players, because a huge driver for these super sixth men are the freak point guards that almost every GM has been creating throughout the last couple seasons, just for their versatility. And yeah, it became it started to become problematic, because if you look at the draft classes of the last couple of seasons, probably this season as well, you see freak, 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 freak. Almost every recreate is going for a freak build. There are
Yeah,
few in between, like you, for example, with Akili, have
and
gone with
freedom.
standard powered forward center build. Yeah, but when you created Freedom, there wasn't this. Yes, freaks were already around, but it wasn't this huge push for freaks that we are seeing right now.
Yeah, but I
Or
think
what
the
do you
rating
think?
MVP of playoffs MVP then was a freak. Let's just check it out. Be certain. But yeah, you can continue on while I check this out.
Yeah, so obviously I'm a bit biased in this because of my own tests and what I found in those tests throughout the last seasons. But in my opinion, freaks have been just flat out better for a lot of things than when you compare it to a standard build. Their additional height gives you a bit more versatility and offensive prowess. Like Jaws showed perfectly dominating everything. Serrano was incredibly efficient as well, in part thanks to his additional height. Baramy and Cooper from the shooting guard positions. And the list goes on and on. And that coupled with their flexibility to move up and down the depth chart, especially for shooting guards and point guards, just make them so much more appealing for the small price of 75 TP in the long run. And yeah, I mean, looking just at the recreate classes pretty much shows it as well. And with almost all GMs opting for a free point guard as well, I get it. From a team building perspective, you have a player that you can plug in everywhere where your roster has a hole, and run him as a sixth man, run him as a supportive type build first, like Adekoya was, and then transforming him into a more complete player. And it just was just better than everything standard builds could offer. And before we have a league that's just running on freak builds, why not go to freaks or standard builds completely? And standard builds don't have the issues that you can just fly around the depth chart, etc. And yeah, so the freak builds in the end were abolished. Personally, I already said this in the announcement in the announcement thread. I was against abolishing it just yet. I would have loved to find a way to maybe retain the freaks or some of their advantages, but create or at least lessen some of their incentives, like lower their height back to normal, take away some of that positional flexibility, introduce more caps or a heavier freak tax in some form to really make freak a unique use case and not it's just better and gives me more flexibility as a standard with pretty much no price attached to it. But it's hard to find a way to effectively nerf freak builds to a degree where they don't get completely burnt down, but also where there are still not the objectively better option. And this balance would have been tough. And so it was opted for the much easier part to eliminate them for now and keep looking into it if we can maybe do some changes to attribute lower starting attributes for players that have been above 1000 TPE in the past, and or going maybe towards more positional flexibility for everyone, etc., etc. A bunch of stuff is being discussed right now, and I think someone mentioned in the office hours as well.
Yeah. So to pick up on that, the rule announcement was that a topic named Change to Player Creation / Freaks. Starting in Season 60, all new player creations will be what was previously known, or currently is by the time of recording, known as standard builds. Everyone will start at the same point attribute-wise, height-wise, and positional eligibility-wise. And yeah, the current freaks in existence then will not be affected at all, so they'll be grandfathered in. And I think there was something else. So for members who have had a player with 1000 or more TP before once, they will be able to decide if they'd like their physical attributes to start at 35 or 20 instead. So the general point of having your physical attributes starting at 20 instead of 35 is that with the 20 jumping, and I also think with 20 strength, but in a lower capacity, your player is less and less prone to driving inside since they don't feel like they would have the lift or competence to finish well inside. So that can also make your player more of a sort of a stationary 3-point shooter instead, or even with 99 quickness, I suppose, a less stationary 3-point shooter. But yeah, I think there could have been a different, or if I had only by myself the task of creating this, I would have first tried to keep the system as it was or as it is by time of recording and further lower the attributes across the board, even that a freak player would have to start with lower attributes in each or lower totals in each attribute instead of just the fouling and athletics, or even start with zeros in fouling and something like that instead of completely removing it. But I also don't see any large problem here. I think it's a good direction to have more, funny to say, more variety, since the point guard and shooting guard freaks theoretically offer the most variety. But everyone knows what one player's best position would be, or has an idea just based on their attribute page. rather than what the team sort of needs. And if a player is good, when a player is not like a number one guy, then they just slot in where they're needed. And then once they are elite in their prime, then they play where they're best, and then you get more, be it freaks or standard players, to fit around them instead. So the versatility is not exactly a moot point, but it's less impactful than in the past we might have thought. With some of the first freaks that came into the league, with Sifa Doshbei and indeed Masato Miyamoto. And yeah, I just checked the reigning Finals MVP when I created Valentino Khan Freedom is Dimitrius Marquis' savior, so it
Yeah.
was a point guard freak. And by the time I got to the league, it was again trays only, so a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, I with all my free players so far, I've had a clear idea that I only want to play one or maybe two of the positions in the depth chart. So if I had made a point guard freak or whatever sort of different freak archetype, then I maybe would have been up to the whims of my general manager. Like obviously, I at some points during Freedom's career, I would have done had been more open to changing my position and changing my attributes just to have better success in the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there, since that's obviously impossible then midway through a career. Well, I guess updating differently would have been an option, but yeah, this is going on a tangent then. So the vote for removal of freak archetypes was 10 votes for, 2 votes against. Uh, Fun to hear that there were such a discrepancy. This seems like an issue where either everyone is for removing the Greek archetypes, or uh, almost no one is. Like this seems like a well more dividing, um, in more fashions than one, dividing subject, that either the vote would be more split or more people would be against it, or then people would be fully on board. But I guess with 12 voters, that's sometimes more difficult to achieve than you think.
I
What?
mean, we had a lot of discussion around it before we decided into the final vote. So there's been a lot of clearing up, and we had one vote where you had a lot of different options for. I think it was several votes that in the end cumulated in the removal, but
Mm-hmm.
we had one voting where we had multiple options lined out for each retaining freaks or removing freaks. I think Mo included it in the announcement as well, at least some of it, where he said, let me. Yeah, exactly. There were 7 voters in support of keeping an option for members to have lower starting attributes, for
Yeah.
example. There was a ton of that. So we had a lot of diverse answers as well. But in the end, it was still a resounding, let's remove them outright for now.
Yeah. And if there were some updates to be made further into the uh, sim engine, which this year, although it's been something like 9 months, it doesn't seem as out of the realm of possibility as it did some years ago. Then there might be worth revisiting this. And since a lot of people seem to be, well, not proud, but happy to be able to be playing more than one or two positions, rather playing, say, point guard through power forward all the way, or even in some cases shooting guard through center, how defense works here all the way. So it's it's something that I could see being reapplied in the future again, with maybe
It
tweaks.
doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe there will be a different path
Yeah,
that allows to be flexible in the choice of your positions. There's currently a discussion going on there. And yeah, who knows? Maybe we get a hold of Greydog software and get an update for FBB in general.
yeah.
I don't believe so, but
Well, Greydog software is easy to reach. It's just what's it called? The developer,
yeah.
yeah, who is a little less easy to reach. Can't remember his name. It's Brian Nichols, but he also has like a screen name that's, well, seems less and less relevant each day once since I can't even remember it anymore. But anyways, um, yeah, you now have a freak player. What do you think? Do you think you'll end up uh, being happy once the rule kicks in and you are one of the freak players in the league where you're not allowed to be, so that you can give yourself or the team you play on a edge in game planning? Or do you think it'll just be business as usual?
I think it will just be business as usual. I mean, while the versatility is certainly a nice add-on for freaks, as you said, not many use it that often. Like, for example, Zeke is a freak small forward, but he has stated that he wants to play only small forward, which is fine. But there are many like it, so I don't think it changes that much. It doesn't give a great edge to playoff teams in terms of game planning with freaks when you have any freaks. But I think they are at a slight advantage because of their hate advantage. For example, if you now have a 7 foot Ezekiel Bridges Jr. going up against a 6'7", 6'9" standard small forward, that's a slight advantage that he's going to have there. So
Or even a player that's not max height? Since sometimes
yeah,
you have small shooting
especially
guard
then.
small forwards that might be 6'6", 6'5" even.
Yeah, for example, then even more so.
Yeah.
And I think it will be fine. It won't be game breaking or league breaking for anyone. Uh, but as I said, I think freaks with the way they were just better than standard builds. At least for the things I wanted to do with builds when I tested around.
Hmm. I've never been interested in having a freak player since, like I said, and even my next player before, or that I'm sort of been throwing around as an idea, um, after the Talib Akili, would have not also been a freak player. So I
But why
really,
wouldn't you have chosen a freak for Achille? Like, for example, just taking that additional height, you are still allowed to play power forward and center as a freak power forward. And sure, you have a little investment at the start with the freak tax, but it probably would make things easier in the scoring department. You don't need as many as athletics to be efficient and such.
yeah, there were two ideas in the beginning. Someone even suggested that I just do a point guard freak. Oh well, rather power forward freak or small forward freak if I wanted to play around with that. But the first option was that I'd have a player with little to no offense at all to make use of the 20 strength and 20 jumping. But I also don't think a player like that is worth the max contract stuff. So you'd always have to be the second, third, or even fourth best offensive player on your team and take a lot of the salary, especially since I like to, well, seem to be one of the top earners in each class that I've been in. So paying 5 million plus max or super max for a player that maybe scores 9 points a game with 59% true shooting, I don't think anyone would have wanted to do that. So that's why I strayed away from that. And if if I wanted to be a fully formed like a Serrano or Jaws, sort of just a tall two-way player, I also found it quite difficult to bring myself, since I like to have like 90 to 95 fouling when I start my regular season, first regular season in the SBA.
Yeah, okay.
That costs a lot, and then uh, for for I think it's easier also to be a defensive specialist when you're cheap, and then be a two-way guy when you're expensive, rather than being an offensive specialist when you're cheap and then a two-way guy when you're in your prime. So all of it just went against the idea of having lowered physicals and lower fouling. Now, maybe someone could say that I might have had a better mid and prime of my career, but also maybe wouldn't have won a championship at least this early, or in this specific setting that we had in Charlotte. So generally, I don't think I would have liked to do that. And for my next player, I think it would have been pretty much a wash. The TP calculations that I did, it like 20, 20 TP difference, and you get sort of the same results even with the freak tags. So that's not a bother at all. So indeed, that's the reasons why I didn't uh, do a freak this time around, and generally doesn't really concern me. Just that I hope everyone else is happy with the direction it's going, and having not more different players. Well, I guess there's going to be more different players in general once you have players that are locked into their standard two positions.
I think it will be interesting how GMs will cover for the change in flexibility they will have in the future when constructing their roster. Like if you get yourself a big man, a guy that can play power forward and small forward, or whatever, that you can still switch around your 6 players on the lineup as much as possible to avoid having fillers on the court. Will be interesting how they will make this happen.
Yeah. Speaking of only standard builds, someone very successful, also known as a coach star, is currently riding high with the Pittsburgh Ironmen with 47 wins in 59 games with only standard builds. Think of that. Yeah,
How
it's
long did
not.
you wait for the slide?
No, it's just sort of a coincidence. Like I didn't plan this all throughout, but it's interesting since I thought one of the top teams also didn't have a freak build on their team, but OG Amaru is a small forward freak, and Maya Witherspoon in Arizona is also a freak build. So yeah, suppose it's kind of a rare sight to be one game behind in the for one game behind the best record in the league with only standard players. That's not something to like try to pick up a record, or like scour the seasons fast and trying to make a record of who's been freak free or who's been freak filled. Since we quite well know the top teams of the past 15 seasons and the player sources that they had. But what do you think? What did you think about the weekend of SBA action? Since I don't know if it was on air or not, but I mentioned how I missed almost all of it by being at work. So what's the short and what's the long on?
I have to admit I haven't really followed as well.
Uh-huh.
I've only seen OKC's results through the locker room, and that Charlotte was on a good winning spree, but I
Came
haven't
to an
followed
end.
a lot.
Yeah, all right.
Busy
Well,
weekend.
I'll just go and do some extempore journalism. I'll hop into the Sim 11 thread right now here, and the oh yeah, the index is obviously updated, so it doesn't matter. The Pittsburgh Ironmen are indeed 47 and 12. Houston Ravens are 48 and 11, but with a 3.9 point difference to advantage to the Ironmen. And the Houston Ravens are also first in defense and fourth on offense, whereas the Ironmen are third on offense and fifth in defense. Of the other top sides, you have Aviators number one in offense still, but a middling 10th in defense, whereas the Inferno are all the way down in 16th in defense and second in offense. So actually, just by looking at this right now, after 60 games have gone by, or just about 60 games, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually saw a Houston versus Pittsburgh finals. What do you think?
Definitely happen. I mean, the homer in me still says it's going to be Charlotte versus Houston in the finals for the third time. But the Ironmen have played great so far. I'm massively impressed with Frost keeping up that insane shooting for a year 5 point guard. I mean, that's crazy. 56% from the field, 64% true shooting. That that's just impressive all around. And I think Frost is going to take home the Point Guard of the Year award as a result instead of PDT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the
But
only part that's lacking so far is that the 3 point shooting volume has gone down for Frost, and also it's not quite there in the 52.3% range that we uh, looked at in the first season or first week of Sims. That you, I said it would be
yeah, I mean that
cool.
that was unattainable.
Yeah,
We all
but
knew that.
it'd still be cool though. Still be
Yeah,
cool.
it would be cool, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Alexei will be busting out a 50% 3 point percentage on decent volume at some point
Mm.
in the SBA. I know that the player type he's going for can be able to do that with a little bit of sim luck.
Yeah, I
But
think Monroe McMahon also had a season in the 50s.
did he?
I think, but it's not as high volume at all. Let's just see here. Oh yeah. It was playoff season in Milwaukee. It wasn't a full regular
Ah,
season. In his Monroe McMahon's regular season shooting, it's 1221 attempts, 550 makes for a 453 point percentage over his career. And yeah, this one season in Milwaukee playoffs that we lost in the first round against Las Vegas, I think he shot
yeah.
42 times. 42 times and made exactly a 50% 21. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking, but not exactly where. But yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be cool if someone was that good. But I also think there's sort of a soft cap over a 82 game season if you play just a regular amount of starter minutes. I think the it algorithmically just pushes your shit down. And like there's no
Yeah,
rhyme or reason to it. It just says that oh, you're now shooting at 51.7. By the end of the season, we need to get this down to 44.9, and that's what we're gonna do. Even if you get wide open 3 point shots for the entire rest of the season, it's just gonna brickier shots.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a
quite
couple
sure.
of these soft caps.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that's how it works at least. Yeah, and
But I mean, looking at the things you mentioned, the Ravens are heads and above everyone else in terms of defense.
yes.
Like five, not quite 5 points, 4.5 points above the second seed Rampage, which I'm a bit surprised even that we are second.
Yeah,
But
it's 4.4 points per 100 possessions, which is a ton of points. Like, say, in a SBA quarter, you have something like, would it be 29 shooting possessions? That means each passing quarter, they're saving like at least 1 point more compared to the second best defense in the league. And then once you compare it to the field, that's a lot more points. And over a full season, that's a lot more points. So it's extremely impressive. The gap, not necessarily the number, because it's all just a matter of circumstance around the league. Suppose there's a one or two less absolutely bad teams than there have been in some seasons, which obviously pushes the defensive rating number higher. But generally, a 4.4 gap to the second place and a large gap to the league median is very impressive.
but since we are on the current SBA and you as a top GM looking for his buy spot, probably hasn't paid a lot of attention. But if you look at the playoff race right now,
Mhm.
there is an insanely close field when it comes to like what is it, the last spot, the last two spots.
Yeah,
Who do you see getting those last two spots over the next week?
I think currently it's Atlanta at seventh with 36 wins. Then New York, Brooklyn, and San Diego all at 36 wins. Although the Corsairs already have two more losses than the two teams above them. And then at 12th is Wolverines with 33 wins only. And then begins the other stack where you have four teams, three in addition to Vancouver with 33 wins right now, with Knights, Thunderbirds, and Rampage all at 33 wins. So the Wolverines have one loss less and one less game played than the Knights, and the Knights have one loss less than the Thunderbirds and the Rampage. So they are the Knights are one game back of the Wolverines in this specific race, and the Thunderbirds would be tied with Rampage to be one game, one game back of the Knights. Since in this, at least I think that's correct. Anyone watching this can go and look at the sbahistory.com/sba/playoff standings and make of that table what they may whenever they may listen to this. But like before the weekend, I would have said it's. I think the Thunderbirds were in that spot to be 12th, and I would have suggested that that will hold. That the few teams above them until the Minutemen are sort of steadier than the team stuck in the just above 500, but not much above 500 range. But now that the Thunderbirds are they're only winning close games and they're sometimes losing quite badly as well in the recent week or so, since there's been in their past 25 games there's been 4 game losing streaks, so they maybe don't have it after all. So I think it'll be up to Wolverines, Knights, and Rampage, and the Thunderbirds just seem to be a bit of a poser team here. But also the New York Rail currently at 36 wins and 23 losses. They are 15th in offense and 14th on defense, which could point to them being prone to regression and completely falling out of the safety spots of 8 to, let's say, 11 right now. So there could be a lot of shakeup there. And with the trust that you had in the Rampage earlier this season, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to hop into the mix like quite steadily. And indeed, the rail could be prone to falling off quite quickly there. So yeah, I think the Thunderbirds are now looking like the worst of the bunch all of a sudden. And then it's the Wolverines. I didn't have much trust in them in the beginning of the season, but they're sort of picked it up. Craven Walker is good. Thurmond is playing better each week, and they have their rotation with Roberts, Kergist, and Joe Young. Quite steady players all around. So they could be good as well there. But I think right now it seems like the Bullets and Corsairs seem just a little tick better than the rest. And then you have the Wolverines, Rampage, Knights, and then Rail and the Thunderbirds. Maybe looking a little suspicious, but the Rail do have those extra wins banked up. So it'll be very interesting come next week
The
for sure.
Corsairs are third in top 5 APE,
Yeah.
so one should expect them to make the playoffs. Like if you can get it done with a 1.1k TPA on average
Yeah.
on your team, then yeah, you shouldn't be necessarily be feuding with those teams down there, which are not nearly as talented, or at least as deeply talented.
Yeah, well, it is after all the San Diego Corsairs who, even if it's been seasons and seasons and they've played well in the few seasons here past, there's still some of that ship magic or boat magic there that's just gonna always loom above them until they actually prove to become a very strong contender year in and year out, I think. I don't know if it's the game plan or the player builds not meshing in together well or this or that, but they certainly shouldn't be in this range. I agree with you there. Um, yeah, just as a little taste here, since I teased the next week's possible SBDL thing, I'm just gonna ask you this question straight. If you had the first pick in the season 59 entry draft that would happen tomorrow, who would you select?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm probably going with MG and his freak power forward, Rauta Perse.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
correct
yeah.
pronunciation.
That's about as good as you'd get for a German. So
I'll take that as a good compliment.
yeah, it
I
is.
mean, Steve Latimer is also an intriguing pick because Perksuit with Alvin Mack had some pretty good season as well, and is having a great season in Atlanta despite regression.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least I think he's regressed. Uh,
No.
but personally,
Yes.
I know MG more. I sort of know the direction he is going, and I believe that it's going to be better than Curtis Davis was at the whole scoring thing. Who knows if he will also win a couple of dunk contests, but we will see. So yeah, I
Pretty
think
difficult for a big guy, it seems. There is usually point guards, shooting guards, and small forwards. That's why Curtis Davis was so popular in there, and that's why Alex Calderon was so popular in there, and that's why Troy Simmons never even got a chance to participate, I don't think. So yeah, hopefully, but I wouldn't count on the dunk contest stuff. Yeah, so yeah, currently MG is number one in player AP in SBA. So
right, right.
certain. Well, yeah. In the upcoming draftees ranking, yeah, but Edward Craven Walker
Ah,
is the top APE player
ah,
in
yeah, yeah.
the SBA currently. So certainly seems like a safe bet, especially once you consider his leading users such as KDD, Jeff, and Precis. Jeff by a whole 63 APE right now, and Precis with a total of 120. Although I think Prezi took a little bit of time off before he got the Las Vegas job, or maybe he's been. Oh yeah. Maybe he's been sort of cautious with his TP for salary cap.
App
I
reasons.
Yeah,
Who
that
knows?
yeah, I should ask him. Maybe we have some reports on this next week. Anyway, yeah, that's a good pick. I'm not gonna give away my plans since I might as well
Uh-huh.
hold the first selection in the SBA entry draft come time. But yeah, that should be all for this week, I think. Thank you to Nepto once again.
No problem. Anytime.
Yeah, especially Sunday, but anytime, but not Sunday morning while you're hungover.
No, not Sunday mornings. Definitely
Mm,
not.
all right. So almost anytime.
Almost.
And by a coach start, it'll always also be almost anytime. And we'll see you almost anytime next week once again. Thanks.